In the spring of 1942, the war seemed to be moving in only one direction. Across Europe, German armies had overturned nearly every assumption about modern warfare. Poland had fallen. France had fallen. Norway, Belgium, and the Netherlands had all fallen. Britain remained, but only after enduring months of bombing and facing the very real possibility of invasion. In China, the war was older still. For nearly 5 years, Chinese soldiers and civilians had lived with invasion, occupation, bombed cities, confiscated crops, arrests, executions, and the steady disappearance of people they loved. Then came Pearl Harbor. Japan struck across the Pacific with astonishing speed. Hong Kong fell, Wake Island fell, Singapore fell, the Philippines were lost. Week after week, the maps changed, the headlines changed, the direction did not. The Axis powers were advancing. The Allies did not simply need a military victory, they needed proof that defeat was not inevitable. They needed something that could change what people believed. The man eventually chosen to help solve the problem was James Harold Doolittle. He was not an unknown officer waiting for his chance. He was already one of America's most accomplished aviators. He had set speed records, pioneered instrument flying, earned an advanced degree in aeronautical engineering from MIT, and built a reputation for understanding aircraft not only as a pilot, but as a scientist. He was technically brilliant, direct, restless, and unusually comfortable with risk. The plan placed before him was simple to describe and nearly impossible to execute. Each crew understood that completing the mission might require flying until the fuel was gone, abandoning the aircraft, and trusting whatever waited below. On the morning of April 18, 1942, the American task force was detected by a Japanese patrol vessel. The patrol boat was destroyed, but Doolittle had to assume that it had already sent a warning. The choice was stark: turn back and abandon the mission, or launch immediately, knowing that the extra distance might consume the fuel they needed to safely reach China. The mission had always been dangerous. Now the odds were worse. Doolittle chose to go. It was not optimism, it was defiance. The 16 bombers crossed the Japanese coast at low altitude. Their targets included military facilities, factories, docks, and industrial areas. The physical damage was limited, but that was never the full measure of the raid. For years, geography had helped protect Japan's sense of security. Its military leadership believed the home islands were beyond the reach of American bombers. Japanese civilians had been encouraged to believe the same. The raid shattered their certainty. American aircraft had reached Japan. Sirens sounded, bombs fell. The home islands were not untouchable. The attack lasted only minutes. Its symbolic effect traveled much further. For Americans, it was proof that the war could move in another direction. For people living under Japanese occupation, it was evidence that the power advancing across Asia was not invulnerable. Then the bombers turned toward China. The first part of the mission had succeeded. Weather closed in. Night fell. The crews could not see the airfields they had hoped to reach. One by one, the crews abandoned their bombers. Doolittle and his crew bailed out over China in heavy weather. The raid had been planned in offices and hangars and briefing rooms. Now all of that disappeared. There was no carrier, no formation, no command structure, no radio contact with the other crews, only rain, darkness, and the knowledge that Japanese forces controlled much of the surrounding country. Doolittle did not know where his crew had landed. He did not know where the other bombers had gone. He did not know who had survived, and he did not know who would find him first. Doolittle's rescue followed a familiar pattern. No one had told the people below that American airmen were coming. A foreign pilot simply appeared, wet, injured, unable to speak the language. The first encounter was uncertain for both men. The pilot did not know whether the villager would help him, report him, or leave him where he stood. Some American airmen carried a piece of cloth bearing a message in Chinese. It identified the wearer as an American ally and asked that he be helped. The message could establish identity. It could not make the decision. The villager still had to choose. For the villager, the decision did not begin with America. It began with occupation. Perhaps his crops had been taken, or a relative had been arrested or killed. The details differed from one person to another. The experience did not. Japan had occupied territory. It had not secured obedience. At the political level, Chinese officials understood that the alliance with the United States mattered. China had been fighting for years and needed continued American support. Returning the raiders served China's interests as well as America's. An Allied pilot returned to safety could fly again. The first villager could not take the airmen all the way to safety. He did not need to. He only needed to know who came next. A farmer led a pilot to another village. A missionary offered shelter and translation. A doctor treated injuries. A local official arranged transportation. Chinese soldiers helped move the man toward territory controlled by the nationalist government. The path changed from crew to crew. The pattern did not. Eventually, Doolittle reached forces aligned with China and the United States. For the first time since leaving the carrier, he was no longer surrounded by uncertainty. The relief was real, but it was incomplete. Doolittle had survived. He had only one question. Where are my men? The bombers had scattered across a wide area. Crews had landed separately. Communications were slow. One crew had been found. Another was moving towards safety. Doolittle learned that 8 airmen had been captured by the Japanese. 3 would later be executed, and a 4th would die in captivity. But most of the raiders were alive. Doolittle learned it one report at a time. So did the military, and so did the country. If every raider had been captured or killed, Japan could have claimed a victory. It could have told its people that America had reached the home islands only to lose every man sent there. The return of the crews denied Japan that victory. Jimmy Doolittle now knew the fate of every crew. His mission was complete. But the full cost of the mission was yet to be revealed. When Japanese authorities realized what had happened, that Chinese villagers had helped the pilots escape, the punishment was swift. Entire communities were targeted. Villages were destroyed. Thousands of Chinese civilians were killed. Many more suffered imprisonment, torture, starvation, and forced displacement. The villagers had not dropped a single bomb. Their only crime was refusing to surrender their humanity. History remembers the bombers. It should also remember the people who refused to let that mission end in failure. The United States military carried the raiders to Japan. The people of China carried them home. Together, they completed the mission and showed the world that anyone who fights for liberty can be a great American.